Um, I suppose the typical way to begin this would be to say, I believed I had a strong marriage and was blindsided by my wife's betrayal. But the truth is, our relationship had been deteriorating for some time. The real shock wasn't her infidelity, it was discovering that my loving wife assumed I would bow to her whims and tolerate her humiliation. For me, it came down to a simple fact. People often mistake kindness for weakness. Let me introduce myself and my wife and explain. My name is Kevin Stofman. I'm 42 years old, and I've been married to Tammy, who just turned 40, for 20 years. We have a 19-year-old daughter, Robin, who's in her first year of college. For years, our marriage had been growing stagnant. Tammy became distant and seemed uninterested in maintaining our connection. We still had intimacy, but it was becoming less frequent. I believe hitting 40 and becoming an empty nester pushed Tammy over the edge. Sadly, it was Robin who stumbled upon the first signs of my wife's spiral into madness. Robin had come home for Christmas break, and on her last day before heading back to school, she needed a computer. I was using mine, so I told her to grab the spare laptop from the closet. I hadn't touched it since Tammy received a new computer for her birthday months earlier. About 30 minutes after I handed her the spare, Robin stormed into my office. "Dad, what kind of weird stuff are you into?" she demanded. I stared at her, confused. "What are you talking about?" I asked. She held up the laptop. "I mean, all these kinky videos you've been watching. And what's with this submission stuff?" she said, pointing to an untitled folder filled with adult videos. I was completely taken aback. "How do you even know about this stuff? You're only 19, I said. "Come on, Dad, I'm not a child," she retorted. "Since when did you start watching this kind of thing?" Shocked, I looked more closely at the folder. "That's your mom's computer. She's the only one who's ever used it," I said. Curious and alarmed, we began digging further. Hidden among the files, we found another folder filled with articles about manipulating a husband into becoming submissive. It hit me that this material had been there for months. With about an hour before Tammy was due home, I had an idea. "Let's check her new computer," I suggested. Robin retrieved it while I powered down the old one. "She's got this one password protected. It's not going to work," Robin said. I led her to Tammy's office and pulled out a drawer from her desk. "Your mom isn't great at remembering her passwords. When she got her old computer, I suggested she write them all down and keep them in one place," I explained, pulling out a piece of paper with a list of passwords. "This doesn't have the one for her new computer," Robin pointed out. "Hold on," I said, reaching under the desk for another piece of paper. "This is her secret sheet. She thinks she's clever hiding it here, but I saw her put it away. I just never had a reason to check until now." I snapped a photo of the paper before returning it to its hiding spot. Within moments, we unlocked her new computer and started searching. It didn't take long to uncover more videos and articles related to submission. However, our investigation was cut short when we heard the garage door opening. We quickly shut everything down and returned the laptop to its original spot. What we'd found was disturbing, but it wasn't definitive proof that Tammy was doing more than watching videos. Robin agreed to keep quiet on the condition that I update her on anything I discovered. Once Robin returned to college, I began my investigation in earnest. Robin, like me, suspected her mom was up to more than just watching adult content. She had noticed changes in Tammy's behavior toward both of us. Toward me, she was distant and dismissive, but with Robin, she was more engaged, albeit in an unusual way. I hoped Tammy's interest in this material was just a phase, but deep down, I doubted it. It took nearly a week before I had enough time alone to thoroughly search Tammy's computers. While combing through her browser history, I found her secret email account. The passwords on her secret sheet weren't entirely clear about what they unlocked, but they provided enough clues for me to access the account. To my surprise, Tammy had saved most of her emails. The majority of them were exchanges with someone named Mistress B, who referred to herself as Tammy's submissive advisor. Their conversations revealed that Mistress B was encouraging Tammy to transform me into a submissive husband. Tammy described me as someone who rarely argued and usually went along with what she wanted. Mistress B took this to mean I was a pushover and would be easy to dominate. When Tammy expressed concerns about my potential resistance, Mistress B advised her to use divorce as a threat, warning that I would lose everything and be left paying for her lifestyle. This shook me. I was aware that divorce often worked out poorly for men, even those who had done nothing wrong. I decided I needed professional guidance and made an appointment with one of the best divorce lawyers in the city, Jackie Stone. At our first meeting, Jackie's assistant asked me to complete a form detailing our employment and assets. A couple of days later, I returned to her office. Jackie greeted me with a wide smile. "Don't worry, Kevin. If you do end up living in a shoebox, it'll be a really nice one," she joked. She continued, "People shouldn't listen to non-lawyers who don't know what they're talking about. Your wife will have a huge problem if she tries to divorce you. I'd bet her so-called expert never even asked about your jobs. Her business is valued at close to $1 million, but her liquid assets are less than half of that. Will immediately demand half the business's value. She'll either have to pay you $500,000 or sell it outright. Her income will be calculated at the time we file, which will be similar to yours," Jackie said, "so she won't be entitled to maintenance. Now, I can't officially advise this, but your house is nearly paid off. Taking out a substantial home equity loan and placing the funds in a trust for Robin's college expenses could protect that money from your wife's reach. Both of you have approximately equal amounts in retirement savings, so that will likely be a wash. If divorce is your decision, we're prepared to proceed." "Would there be any benefit to filing on grounds of adultery?" I asked. "It wouldn't impact asset division," she explained. "But we might use the evidence you're gathering to pressure her into a favorable settlement. If her activities become public, it could damage her business reputation." Jackie agreed to draft the necessary paperwork and wait for my signal to serve Tammy. While we didn't yet have concrete proof of her infidelity, the emails strongly suggested it was imminent. In the meantime, I could use the delay to safeguard additional assets from Tammy's grasp. I updated Robin on what I'd discovered and shared the lawyer's advice. "You're telling me she's trying to turn you into a submissive husband?" Robin asked, outraged. "That cheating woman? Does she honestly think you'd go along with that?" "In part, it's my fault," I admitted. "I've always given her whatever she wanted. That needs to stop." "Wait, Dad," Robin said, her tone shifting. "Maybe you should play along. Do you think she'd stop if you confronted her? She'd just hide it better. Play along and let her dig herself into a trap." I mulled it over. "You know, I like that idea," I said, a plan beginning to form. I continued monitoring Tammy's secret email account. Mistress B instructed her to cut off intimacy with me and to become more demanding. Tammy was to gauge my reactions by being harsher and more controlling. Mistress B advised her to dangle intimacy as a reward for obedience and to always criticize my efforts, withholding affection if I didn't meet her standards. If I complied, it would signal my readiness to become her submissive husband. Though I considered confronting her, Mistress B had already warned Tammy to change tactics if I resisted, to humiliate me covertly instead. Following Robin's advice, I decided to play along. I acted the part of a docile, obedient husband while secretly seething with anger. Ironically, my resentment made it easier to pretend disappointment when she withheld intimacy. Things took a turn when I read an email Tammy sent to Mistress B declaring she'd found her bull, a salesman for one of her suppliers. Mistress B encouraged Tammy to sample her new partner before implementing her plan with me. Despite my anger, a small part of me hoped Tammy would come to her senses before crossing the line into adultery. That hope was shattered a week later when Tammy emailed Mistress B, I've experienced my partner in every way. I'm ready to make my husband submissive. Identifying the bull wasn't difficult. Emails from a Stephen Rose revealed his role. One message thanked Tammy for an amazing night of intimacy, while another, dated the previous day, expressed excitement about humiliating me. Stephen wrote that he had thought it over and wanted me to serve him. A quick search confirmed his identity. He was a 5'10" salesman weighing about 180 pounds. Hardly the imposing figure I'd imagined. At over 6 feet tall and 200 pounds, I felt confident I could handle him on my worst day. Stephen was also married with 2 young children, which made me pity the destruction heading for his family. Over the next 2 weeks, I monitored their emails. Stephen even sent Tammy POV photos of the 2 of them together, unwittingly providing me with concrete evidence of her adultery and the means to ruin his marriage as well. The email that sealed their fate came from Tammy to Mistress B. She announced she was ready to execute her plan, claiming I was sufficiently compliant and that Stephen was fully on board. The showdown was set for Friday night. Tammy planned to lay out her new rules before Stephen arrived, threatening me with divorce if I didn't immediately comply. She also told Mistress B about a special gift she had prepared to cement her dominance. With 3 days to prepare, I finalized my response. My lawyer handed me the completed divorce papers, and I obtained Stephen's wife's email address and phone number. When I shared Tammy's plan with Robin, she was appalled but thrilled by my counter-strategy. Robin agreed to be on standby to play her part. On Friday evening, Tammy sat nervously at the kitchen table as I entered the room. I activated the digital recorder hidden in my pocket. "Kevin, sit down," she ordered. "We need to talk." Feigning innocence, I replied, "Can I change first?" Her voice turned sharp. "No, sit down and listen. You're not going to interrupt." I complied, setting my briefcase beside me and nodding for her to continue. "There are going to be some changes around here and you'll need to accept them," she began. "First, I'm taking a lover. He's coming over tonight to have intimacy with me. Your role will be to clean me up afterward and prepare him for another round." My expression remained neutral as she continued. "You'll keep doing the household chores and following my orders without question." When she paused, I asked, "Is that all?" "No," she snapped. "I have a gift for you." Tammy shoved a wrapped box toward me. "You'll start wearing this all the time, and I'll have the only key. Go ahead, open it." Inside the box was a chastity cage. I immediately recognized it from the videos Tammy had saved on her computer. Holding up the device, I asked, "Are you finished?" "Yes," Tammy replied. "I know this is a significant adjustment, but you'll adapt and do as I say." She was starting to look uneasy, likely expecting a different reaction from me. "I should warn you, though, if you don't agree, there will be consequences," she added. I couldn't help but chuckle softly. "Are you done now?" Tammy nodded hesitantly. "Aren't you supposed to threaten me with divorce? Tell me I'll lose everything and end up living in a shoebox?" I asked, my tone dripping with sarcasm. "Well, yes," Tammy stammered, her voice less confident now. "Those are some of the consequences, so you'd better go along with it." I pulled out my phone and sent a prearranged email to Steve's wife, then quickly dialed Robin. "Hey, sweetheart," I said, loud enough for Tammy to hear. "She finally laid it all out. You won't believe this. She just handed me a chastity cage." Tammy tried to regain control. "Put the phone down. Who the hell are you talking to?" she demanded. I glared at her, then spoke into the phone. "I'll have to call you back, honey. I need to handle this," I said, before placing the phone on the table. Turning to Tammy, I slammed my hand down with a resounding thud, making her flinch. "Never interrupt me when I'm speaking to my daughter," I said calmly but firmly. Tammy stood frozen, her mouth opening and closing without a word. "Good. Now that I have your attention, let's recap. If I understand correctly, your grand plan is to have some man come here tonight to sleep with you while I watch. This arrangement will continue, with me as your obedient servant. Oh, and let's not forget the part where I'm supposed to wear this cage. I held it up. And only you have the key. And if I don't go along with this madness, you'll divorce me, take everything I've worked for, and leave me living in a shoebox. Does that sum it up? Tammy, regaining some of her confidence, straightened. Yes, that's exactly how it's going to be. I set my briefcase on the table, opened it, and said, "Call Steve." Her composure wavered. "What? Who's Steve?" I snatched her phone, unlocked it with her passcode, and quickly dialed Steve's number. Placing the call on speaker, I said, "You know, Steve, your bull." Steve answered almost instantly. "Hey, baby." "How did the wimp take it? Is he ready?" "Sorry, Steve," I said, my voice cold. "This isn't baby. This is the wimp. I have a few questions for you. When you started with my wife, did you mention that you're married with 2 small children?" Judging by her reaction, I'd guess not. "More importantly, did you let your wife know you were planning to spend the evening with mine?" By your silence, I'm guessing you didn't. "Don't worry though, I took care of that for you. I'm sure she'll be thrilled to hear from you. Especially with the pictures you were kind enough to share. They'll be useful in her divorce and mine." "You son of a, I'll kill you," Steve roared. "Oh my, is that a threat?" I replied coolly, reaching into my briefcase and pulling out my handgun. Tammy gasped in horror. "Quiet, Tammy," I snapped, before addressing Steve again. "Are you familiar with firearms, Steve? That sound you just heard was a .45 caliber handgun being chambered. I've been curious about what a .45 round would do to a man. If you show up at my door, we can find out together." After a moment of silence, I turned to Tammy, who was now visibly panicking. "Looks like he hung up," I said mockingly. "I didn't even get to tell him I also forwarded some of his emails to his employer. Did you know his company frowns upon fraternizing with clients?" I picked up the chastity cage and examined it closely. "Small," I muttered, tossing it at her. "Really, Tammy? You know damn well this wouldn't fit." "Just one of many miscalculations you've made. Did you honestly think I'd go along with this insanity?" Tammy started stammering as I pulled out a folder and slid it across the table. "What's this?" she asked, her voice trembling. "It's a divorce petition," I said. "My lawyer, who, unlike your so-called advisor, actually went to law school, wanted me to remind you that taking legal advice from strangers on the internet isn't wise. Let me give you the highlights. First, you're not taking everything from me, and I won't be living in a shoebox. We live in a 50/50 state. That means all marital assets are split evenly. Did you happen to tell your advisor that you own a successful business?" Tammy's face went pale. "No," she whispered. "I didn't think so," I said. "I'm demanding half the value of the business you built during our marriage. According to the most recent valuation, it's worth $1,000 million. That means you owe me $500,000. You might have to sell the company to pay me." "But that valuation was just for securing a loan," Tammy protested. "You know the company doesn't have that kind of liquid cash." "You planned all this, didn't you?" she accused, tears streaming down her face. "No," I shot back. "You planned this. I'm just responding to your scheme. How's that working out for you?" Tammy broke down sobbing. "I don't want a divorce. Isn't there any way we can fix this?" "Fix this?" I repeated, incredulous. "You wanted to lock me in a cage. I don't know what happened to make you lose your mind, but I'm done. Your actions prove what I've suspected all along. You mistook my kindness for weakness. Well, let me correct that misunderstanding. From now on, I'll treat you with the same respect you've shown me." "Kevin, I'm sorry," Tammy sobbed. "I was looking for excitement and got carried away. Can't we just move past this?" Tammy, I finally understand how wrong it was for me to push you into this situation. You craved excitement, so I'm going to give you exactly that. Won't it be thrilling to go to divorce court? Imagine the excitement of explaining to your family the kind of unfaithful woman you've become. And let's not forget the thrill of selling your business just to pay me off. Yes, Tammy, you're about to experience plenty of excitement. I can't sleep either, said Coach Tammy Button, stepping into the theater room to crack the door. From the forceful knocking, I was confident I knew who it was. I grabbed my .45 pistol before heading to the door. As I approached, a voice shouted, "Open the door, you son of a—" I immediately stepped back, pulled out my phone, and dialed 911. "I need police at my house right now," I told the operator. "My wife's boyfriend is at the door threatening me. I don't know if he's armed, but I am. If he breaks in, I'll shoot to defend myself." I placed the phone down, but left the line open. "Steve, get away from my door. The police are on their way," I shouted. Steve's banging grew louder, the heavy blows making it clear he was trying to break in. "I'm going to kill you," he yelled. Tempted to unlock the door and let him barge in so I could shoot him, I stopped when I heard sirens in the distance. Through the door, I could hear the police ordering Steve to show his hands and move back. When he refused, one of the officers yelled, "Taser deployed!" Later, we learned that Steve's wife had snapped when she read my email and ran to her father for help. Her father, who lived next door, was waiting when Steve arrived. Steve barely escaped alive before fleeing to my door. After his arrest, I noticed large dents on the side of his car, likely from a baseball bat. It's unfortunate his father-in-law didn't catch him before Steve tried to break into my house with a weapon. He might have avoided jail time. Still, the incident allowed me to secure a restraining order against him, though I wouldn't need it until he was released. I warned Tammy that I'd get a restraining order against her if she didn't move out. Although no judge would have granted it, she reluctantly left, kicking and screaming, to live with her parents. Tammy continued pleading with me, insisting she didn't want a divorce. She hired a lawyer who demanded an in-person meeting to negotiate the terms. Mrs. Stone, my lawyer, advised me to prepare for Tammy's lawyer to challenge everything in the petition, describing him as a real scumbag. While he would likely raise his voice, she assured me he wasn't particularly clever and cautioned me not to let him intimidate me. During the meeting, Tammy and her lawyer attempted to dissuade me from proceeding. Tammy played the sweet and innocent act, saying, "Honey, this was all a mistake. I thought it would spice up our marriage. Steve and I were never intimate, I promise. I didn't cheat on you." I stared silently, refusing to respond. Her sleazy lawyer chimed in, "Mr. Stoffman, we're prepared to forgive your baseless accusations against Mrs. Stoffman and move on. However, if you insist on continuing, we'll countersue for slander against her good name." I laughed and turned to my lawyer, remarking, "You said they'd try this." Mrs. Stone opened a folder and slid several photographs toward Tammy and her lawyer. "I believe these prove otherwise," she said. "Here's one of you and Steve together. I suppose that's not cheating? And this one shows him with you from behind. Hard to deny that's you. I'd recognize that mole on your backside anywhere. Oh, and here's one of you riding Steve. He sure knows how to capture moments, doesn't he?" I added, "Did my soon-to-be ex-wife forget to mention I had these pictures?" Turning to Tammy, I said coldly, "I'm not stopping this divorce. Fight all you want, but I'm done." I handed her lawyer another picture. This is the cage she wanted to use on me. No, I will never forgive or forget. Tammy and her lawyer began whispering furiously. It was clear she hadn't told him Steve had taken photos of their encounters. Their conversation grew heated, and I overheard Tammy admit, "He said he had pictures, but I didn't believe him." With my eyes closed, I wasn't paying attention to him while he was near me. Mrs. Stone proposed we take a break so the lawyers could consult their clients. As we stepped out of the room, we shared a laugh, but when we returned, Tammy looked entirely different. The innocent and sweet expression she'd been wearing was gone. Her lawyer promptly announced, "We're going to request counseling." Mrs. Stone had predicted this tactic, and I had already told her I could endure as many sessions as they demanded. In the event counseling doesn't lead to reconciliation, we'll need to discuss the division of assets. Your proposal is completely unreasonable, her lawyer continued. He pulled out a file containing a list of our properties and assets. Your demand for $500,000 for Mrs. Stoffman's business is ridiculous. We need an impartial appraisal of its value before any figures are finalized. Tammy glanced at me, interjected, "You know my business is worth maybe half that." Mrs. Stone smirked, opened a folder, and slid a stapled set of papers toward Tammy. "Mrs. Stoffman," she began, "I believe you'll recognize this document as a loan application for your business. If you turn to the final page, you'll see your signature alongside a statement made under penalty of perjury. After having this notarized, you submitted it to the bank, affirming the value of your company was just over $1 a million. Based on that figure, the bank approved your loan. If you're now claiming your business isn't worth that amount, that's problematic. Not only would you be admitting to perjury, but because you sent this document via the postal service, it constitutes mail fraud. I know your lawyer doesn't specialize in criminal law, but I'm sure he's aware of how seriously federal authorities treat mail fraud." Laughing, I added, "Tammy, maybe you're the one who'll end up in a cage." Tammy went pale, turned to her lawyer, and they argued in hushed tones. A few moments later, her lawyer declared, "This meeting is over." A week later, I was stunned to find Tammy at my door. She looked disheveled, her hair a mess, and her tired eyes revealing she hadn't slept. "Please, Kevin, we need to talk," she pleaded. I opened the door and asked, "Didn't we cover everything the night you tried to turn me into a submissive husband?" I led her to the kitchen table and said, "Go ahead, Tammy. What's on your mind?" "I can't do this, Kevin. I was so wrong. So stupid. I'm losing everything. My mind, my business, even Robin. She refuses to speak to me. Every time I call, she calls me a cheater and hangs up. My parents are furious. I overheard my dad telling my mom I'm a disgrace and should leave their house. Steve's wife even showed up at my parents' place, threatening to hurt me." Well, Tammy, it sounds like you're reaping exactly what you've sown. Isn't it thrilling?" I responded. Tears rolled down her cheeks as she asked, "You wouldn't actually send me to jail, would you?" "It's not up to me," I replied. "Your actions, like always, will determine that. You were so eager to put me in a cage. How does it feel knowing the key is now in someone else's hand? Did you really think I'd just go along with all this?" "I got carried away," she admitted. "I saw things online that excited me, and that woman convinced me you'd enjoy it. She said the way you took over housework without complaint showed you wanted to be controlled." "Or maybe," I countered, "it showed I'm a decent guy trying to make my wife happy." "Tammy, this is pointless. I'm not changing my mind. Don't mistake my previous patience for weakness. I suggest you drop the counseling demand and start looking for a buyer for your business." Shortly after, Tammy fired her lawyer and hired someone more competent. Her new attorney told her she was fighting a losing battle and advised her to minimize her losses. 2 months later, we were back in the same conference room. Tammy appeared as defeated as she had the day she'd shown up at my house. Mrs. Stone informed me Tammy had a buyer lined up for her business, but after paying off her debts, she'd only net about $400,000. Their initial settlement offer proposed splitting the proceeds evenly, but we rejected that and demanded the entire amount. This meeting was to finalize the financial details. Tammy's lawyer pushed a folder toward Mrs. Stone, clearing his throat. "My client accepts your most recent offer," he stated. "Mr. Stoffman will retain sole ownership of the marital home. Each party will keep their respective retirement accounts. The bank accounts will remain divided equally. Regarding Mrs. Stoffman's business, there is a contract in place for its sale at $400,000. Once the funds are received, Mr. Stoffman will be issued a check for $320,000. He added, I assume we won't need to include anything about the loan documents in the settlement? Mrs. Stone stood. No, I don't think you'd want that in writing. Once the divorce papers are signed, we're done here. As Tammy's tears fell, she turned to me. Kevin, can we have a moment to talk? I nodded, signaling to Mrs. Stone that I'd allow it. Once we were alone, Tammy said, I'm so sorry, Kevin. I know I can't earn back your trust, but could you help me with Robin? She won't talk to me or meet with me. When she does answer, she calls me awful names. What did you expect? I replied. What did you think she'd support you putting me in a cage and being intimate with another man? I can't change her mind for you. You'll have to fix this yourself. Tammy lowered her head and shuffled out of the room. I wanted to ask how she was enjoying all the excitement she had caused, but that would have been cruel. I'd done enough already. And so, this chapter of my life came to a close. Did the story go as you expected, or did the twists catch you off guard? Share your thoughts in the comments below. If this kept you engaged, don't forget to like the video. And if you haven't subscribed, now's the perfect time. Join our community for fresh, compelling stories every day. Hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss out. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one.